G'day and kia ora from deep in the southern hemisphere, the Antipodes, home to the mythical world of Middle-earth, Aotearoa, land of the long white cloud, southern tip of the Polynesian Triangle, otherwise known as New Zealand, the green gem in the South Pacific, home also to Mohi Man, one of its many names, or New Zealand's Bigfoot, jumping into hyperspace across fibre optic cabling faster than a TR-6 Telos classified craft. I'm Mark Capel, otherwise known as the Haunted Man, whose background is immersed in supernatural, surviving experiences out of a horror movie and communing with those in the light. It is my quest to delve into the mysteries of our world, scaring the shadows back into the darkness, shedding light photons beyond our last breath, and taking a portal into other dimensional realities. So climb over that rusty barbed wire fence in your mind and turn on the flashlight. Since my night investigations over by Skinwalker Ranch, I had discovered that we had a heavy rock thrown at us up on UFO Hill, which was later determined months later from listening to the audio that it was probably a Sasquatch. This is back in 2013. Now, in New Zealand from 2016 onward, I started having strange experiences out in the bush close to Auckland while doing an outdoor hobby and exploration. Something bipedal approached me a few times, along with other strange occurrences such as tree snaps, finding structures, strange thumps, large footprints, nearby unexplained crashes, samurai chatter, and strange EVPs. A powerful spirit being that came to me, inviting me back out into the bush area, touched me on the head and shook me in my bed late last year, letting me know that this experience was for real. I had gone out to the area on the date given to me and had a large bipedal creature run past me on the slope. There are many stories from all walks of life having strange sightings of this giant ape-like creature. Interesting to point out that Bigfoot or Sasquatch is called by hundreds if not into the thousands of names. The Patterson-Gimlin film shot in 1967 in Bluff Creek, California has stirred up a lot of controversy as to whether it is real or hoax, although no one has yet come up with a suit or can explain the different proportions on the creature, which vary from humans. The old film, which runs for 59.5 seconds, features a possible female Bigfoot known informally as Patty. Since then, there have been other videos and recordings of the ape-like creatures or wild people. Perhaps they are more civilized than us cave dwellers and clothed people. In Bigfootdom, there is a lot of jealousy, backbiting, and disagreements. Not just arguments between believers, experiencers, and skeptics, but also the downright nastiness between some researchers, and I thought the paranormal crowd was a battleground. Disbelief, especially with what some call the woo Sasquatch or supernatural Sasquatch, that can appear and disappear, or are seen around UFOs or portals. They have the ability to read our minds and intentions, and can even speak to us, visit our dreams and homes. It appears that they have some ghost-like qualities. Maybe different varieties have various abilities. To some, this is nothing but heresy and illogical, though people still have these encounters regardless of others' opinions and lack of experience. It seems more and more people are having these enigmatic encounters. People that seem to get close to them are having a kind of Jane Goodall approach, or using a Jane Goodall approach, offering them food, talking to them, and even sleeping out in the darkness of the wilds in their habitat, treating them with love and respect. Many of these people are having amazing experiences, and the numbers are growing. Some even claim to have been healed from deadly illnesses. Some of these experiences are scientists and highly intelligent, educated individuals. Now, on a side note, Bigfoot-like beings were seen over at Skinwalker Ranch. No doubt some of you know that I did a documentary called Skinwalker Ranch Apocalypse Close Encounters. Now, Skinwalker Ranch had its share of strange creatures, craft, and beings, and also two known portals which these creatures and craft would come through. Now, they seem to have the same ability that the woo Sasquatch had as well. Now, I recommend reading George Knapp or Dr. Colm Keller's book published some time ago called Hunt for the Skinwalker, science confronts the unexplained at a remote ranch in Utah. So, if you aren't into the woo crowd, I ask that you open your mind to my guest tonight and his experiences and discoveries, which are also in some ways parallel to mine recently. My guest tonight, who many of you will have heard of, is Mike Patterson of YouTube channel Sasquatch Ontario, who has some amazing high-quality audio recordings which illustrate that Sasquatch is not a wild animal. I understand that he's been having a close relationship with the family of Sasquatch out in the wilderness of Ontario, Canada. One of the Sasquatch known as Nefertia. Welcome, Mike. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Mark. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.
So I've listened to your recordings, some of the recordings that you have on YouTube, and they're pretty amazing recordings. I mean, I've listened to a lot of media and watched a lot of videos over the past years about Bigfoot, and when someone mentions Bigfoot, your name comes up, especially regarding the audio, the recordings that you have, the words even spoken in English with a very strong set of lungs is absolutely amazing. Can you tell me, how you came to have contact with Sasquatch? I mean, how does this all begin for you?
I believe it all began when I was, much younger. I think about 12 years old. I believe I had my first sighting, and that situation, that left an imprint on me and scared the hell out of me. But fast forward to 2008, I had been spending some time in the woods, my time off with a camera, chasing wildlife, photographing wildlife and stuff. So I was in the woods a lot by myself on my time off with my camera, just, enjoying nature. And one day I just had an epiphany about Sasquatch. This thought came to me, and I started looking into the subject. And at one point, I made a comment on a YouTube video, and it was from that comment that somebody contacted me and asked me if I wanted to go into an area of activity, which it wasn't too far off from me. And I had a difficult time believing at that time the proximity of where this location was. It was basically just outside the city of Toronto. And I thought, no way, there's, but I was open. I didn't, I was skeptical, and I always have been. I try to stay objective as I can and open-minded. But it was about a month later that I went and met up with this guy. I talked to him a couple times, and we ended up pulling up Google Earth, and he showed me where to meet him. So I met him about, I think it was about noon on October 25th, 2008. And I remember it was kind of a drizzly day. It was fall time here, and there was a really light rainfall. And so he took me into this area, and he kind of started showing me the ropes. Just start banging on trees and giving some calls, and I had no idea what I was dealing with at this time, right? And I still wouldn't really for about another 4 years. But that day, it was about 4.5 hours later. He picked up a rock and went and smacked a tree a few times, and almost instantly I heard sound like a gorilla chest thump. And I was pretty familiar with the sounds in the forest, and this sound, it struck me as really odd. It stopped me in my tracks. It was close too, right? It was a rapid chest thump 3 times, really really quick, and it sounded just like you see a gorilla thumping his chest. And we both stopped, and then it was only a few seconds later we got 3 giant low-end guttural whoops that came out of the forest, and they were so loud they filled the forest. It was, I imagine this Sasquatch to be about 10 feet tall, but it was that moment right then and there that solidified for me that Sasquatch were real. And I'd never heard anything like this in my life. And as soon as I heard it, you know what it is. There's no second guessing it, kind of thing. But still, even still, I spent the next 2 weeks in denial, basically. This incident playing on my mind just 24/7. You can't shut it off. It's quite astonishing how such an incident will play on your mind so much. It's just crazy. But I spent the next 4 years frequenting that area, and I went back the next week actually, and I encountered the same sounds. And well, after that last incident, though, nothing else happened. And we ended up going home, kind of thing. But it was a week later. I went back in there, and I was by myself this time, and I heard the exact same triple chest thump sound. And this was the first time, I got what I believe they call getting zapped, kind of thing, with infrasound, right? So this happened beside me. I was walking the trail, and I heard it right there. So I knew they were right there. I had a camera on me, video camera, binoculars. I had all my gear with me. And next thing I know, I'm in my car, kind of halfway home, and I give my head a shake, wondering what the hell I was doing there, kind of thing. So that was really strange. And so I spent the next several years in that area and having a multitude of incidents, vocalizations, and nothing really huge to nothing like, especially that would happen about 4 years later with when I came upon the incident up in the situation up in the Kawartha Lakes region up in Ontario. But it was those 4 first years that led to me being contacted and invited into this situation at this private property up in the Kawarthas. And this is where I was given the opportunity to investigate, and this is where I made contact with a family of Sasquatch, and where I captured all those vocalizations plus a multitude of other evidence and stuff.
So, when this kind of stuff happens, it kind of wakes you up to, what is actually going on out there. And I know many people, when they have these kinds of experiences, myself included, you kind of get post-traumatic stress disorder, or people have a hard time processing what's happening to them, or accepting, what might be going on. I know this happens to people that see UFOs as well. They see something up close, and they realize, if they know for sure that this is something not of this world, then that changes their reality, and they begin to have to open their mind up to other things. Now, I want to know, for people out there that haven't had these kinds of experiences, what kinds of things happen out in the forest to indicate that Bigfoot's in there? What kinds of things can happen to you when you're out in the woods?
What started happening was, they're always a step ahead of you. It's amazing how much with their activity, it kind of boggles the mind, some of the things that can happen around you. But you can get things happen. They do a lot of stick breaks and rock clacking, that sort of thing. And you may get short little vocals here and there. They'll push trees over. I've heard several trees come down in the time that I've been doing this. There's strange light anomalies, and I've witnessed several different types of light anomalies, sometimes on request. This was, that's after some advanced contact sort of thing, but there's still strange light anomalies that happen regardless, what stage activity you're at, kind of thing. But you know, a lot of stick breaks and stuff. I've noticed they, you know, I'll put audio out and they'll be right on it. Sometimes I walk away and I just fired up the audio recorder and I do playback and they're snapping a stick right at the microphone, you know, within seconds, sort of thing. So they're right there, you know, and um, start I started having things happen. I remember the first time my car was outside, and I came outside, and there was this little plastic ice cream cone top piece from a kid's toy sitting on the back trunk of my vehicle. And there's no way that could have got there by itself. You know, there was nobody around, sort of thing. And with the activity that was going on at the time, it um, it was just one of those head scratcher moments, and you get a lot of that. A lot of incidents where you just kind of, you know, what the hell kind of. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, this is quite common. You know, they can do things right under your nose, right? They have abilities, you know, they have an evolved consciousness, and people are finally starting to realize this. And this was not when I first started with that situation up in the Kawarthas there with Neftia's family, and I started putting this stuff out there. It wasn't till about a year later that I really come out with what was going on. You know, I didn't want to speak out at first about the strange stuff. You know, people kept telling me follow the footprints and all that, and I said I was, and they were asking where they went, and I said I knew exactly where they went, and all of them went nowhere. You know, there's a lot of single footprints and trackways that they just start and stop. You know, they don't go anywhere. And I witnessed hundreds of footprints with that situation in snow. And this is, you know, clean snow, freshly fallen snow. So they have this ability to transcend space and time, it seems, with you know, an ability to leave just one footprint if they choose. And I've seen this on a multitude of occasions. And activity can also follow you home. And I've witnessed this in several places, and even footprints, and I've had vocalizations inside the house. Um, so when people who are going out, you know, searching for contact, um, you know, my advice would be just don't put up trail cams. Just go in with the curiosity and you know, an open mind, a good intent towards them, and you know, like you're looking to make friendship with them, right? They are people. They have names. They have families. You know, they have language. So they are a people. They're definitely different, and they've evolved down a different path than we have. But people are starting to be more open to their abilities, and this is a good thing, because you know, people are starting to, you know, to realize that there's much more going on here. So they're more apt to be aware of, you know, the smaller aspects going on around them, like those little stick breaks that happen. You might not think it's a 10-foot Sasquatch, but it could very well be, right? Um,
I'd just like to put this out there, see what you think. Now, about 2 weeks ago, I was in my area that I go to. I came across this area where there was several big trees that were snapped like toothpicks. Now, at first, I thought when I looked at it, well, that's got... whatever did that had the power of a hurricane or a tornado. Now, it obviously wasn't a tornado because there was no path of destruction. It was just within this about 100-foot area. But there were these these huge trees. I could barely put my arms around it. Were snapped off. No chainsaw marks, no saw marks, no mark of any kind to indicate that it was done by humans. Now, you mentioned about tree breaks. Is that something possibly that they might do?
Definitely. I hear a lot of branch breaks, tree limb snaps, and like I said, I've heard of a few trees fall nearby in areas when I'm visiting locations, and they seem to I don't know if whatever their reasoning is behind it. There could be a multitude of reasons. They could be showing their presence. If it happens when as humans are in the area. They could be maybe it's a territorial marker or some other sort of marker kind of thing. Um, so I'm not sure their reason for why they do that, but I'm quite convinced they do it, considering the amount of stick breaks I've captured on audio with them. So yeah, they definitely do that.
Now, you mentioned seeing light anomalies with them. Could you describe kind of what those anomalies are like?
Yeah, I've seen. There's been a few things. There was one. This was really interesting. One night, I was sitting with the other guy, the cottage owner's son. We were sitting in chairs, as we always would. We'd put out chairs on there's a little single lane gravel road that runs out front of the cottage, and the tree line starts. It's a single lane, and then the forest tree line's right there. It goes up on maybe I don't know, 60-degree incline. Maybe not quite that steep, but and we'd sit there on the road, and this is where all the interactions, pretty much most of them, a lot of the stuff happened inside the cottage too, but not really in the forest. I would be in my tent, I would go sleep in my tent when the weather was warmer, but most of the interactions were happening before I would get in the tent for the night, because I wouldn't get into the tent till 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning sometimes. But anyways, so we were sitting in the chairs one night, and it was completely overcast, and it might have been about 2 o'clock in the morning, nice and dark. And at one point, I was always asking to see the light, sort of thing, because that's just something I would do, and sometimes they would comply. But we were both sitting there, and I didn't know where he was looking. We can't tell where each other's looking. It was dark, and all of a sudden, this big triangular shape appears on the forest floor. I think it was 20, 30 feet in front of us, and it was about 10 feet wide on one end, and then it tapered up to a point, and that was about, I wrote it down, I can't remember, it might have been 20, 30 feet long, something like that, but it was like this big triangular shape that appeared on the forest floor, and it just kind of came on like somebody flipped a light switch, but there was nothing there for this to happen, and it was the color of moonlight, and there was no sharp edges, no defined edges on it, but it was still, this triangular shape, just no sharp edges on it. And it was it came on like a light switch for about 5 seconds, and then it shut off like a light switch, which it was really strange, how it come on and off. And I said to the guy sitting beside me, I said, "Did you see that?" And he goes, "Yeah, I saw that." So we were both looking at the same spot when it happened. And that was one of the strange incidents that we, had while we were sitting outside there. And we had another one with a glowing, pulsating red orb, which was, that was really pretty wild, that one. It would grow to about 4 feet in diameter. I was actually, we were again sitting outside, and all of a sudden, the other guy, he got up from his chair and took off up into up the hill. And he this is out of character for him. He normally he wouldn't do this, right? You know, there was a lot of fear with him. So taking off into the forest like that, you know, was kind of unheard of. So I just sat back. You know, I watched his little flashlight go up the hill, and at one point, about halfway up, it stopped and went off. So I just kind of sat there and I waited, and I gave it a few minutes, and then I said, "Screw this," and I went up there and went up to where he was, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he didn't really say anything. And then I looked back down towards where we were sitting, down towards the cottage area, and this glowing red orb appeared, and it um, and I said to the guy, I said, "What the hell's that?" And he said, "What?" And I grabbed him by the shoulder and pulled him, you know, towards where I was because the trees were in the way, sort of thing. So he kind of freaked out a little bit because he had seen this before with his girlfriend, but he had seen it in a way where it was like rows of lights, and they turned into this doorway, this red translucent doorway in the forest. I didn't witness that, but he said this was the same sort of light. But this one was a single pulsating orb, and it had a bright red nucleus, and kind of diminished around the edges, and it would slowly pulsate from really small to it looked about 4 feet in diameter, and then it danced around, and it was kind of doing this zigzagging around just right there in the immediate area where it was. And it felt like this went on for about 5 minutes. I had audio running down the hill by my car, so you can kind of hear what we're saying a little bit. At least you can measure the time on the incident, sort of thing. So it was what felt like about 5 minutes. I think it ended up being 20 or closer to 25 minutes when we checked back with the audio. So that was kind of strange too. And at one point, I went to take one single footstep to get a better view, and as soon as I did that one footstep, boom, show was over, and that was it. So there's been other incidents with I've witnessed an orb on request come out of thin air, do about a 1 second boomerang trajectory right in front of me, and then disappear again. So there's different aspects with the light phenomenon, but it's definitely something that comes with their close interaction and close activity.
I had something similar to you over at Skinwalker Ranch, by Skinwalker Ranch, observing with a point of view camera. It was extremely windy on this particular night, and I noticed these lights would come up to me and shoot past me. I mean, they were split second fast. I had to actually review my video footage, and I noticed this light that's kind of like a motorcycle headlamp was coming straight towards me and veered straight in front of my face. It lit up my face with the light, and actually it turned deliberately in front of me and just took off. Now, that was pretty amazing. Now, it was really windy, and this thing flew against the wind, so it's kind of similar to the light anomalies that you talk about. A lot of strange stuff can happen. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So you got to visit the Skinwalker Ranch area, did you?
Yes, I spent a couple of nights up over by there, including having the guards try to scare us off the main front, the road leading up to it. In fact, they've actually Bigelow's bought up the rest of the road, which was public. You could drive up. You can't drive up there anymore. He's bought it up. But yeah, I spent a bit of time. Actually just a weekend up there. Had some pretty strange experiences, and this is actually what started me on my personal quest to understand what is going on with the Bigfoots, because I went there to try and record UFOs and other things. Instead, on the Saturday night, we had a large rock thrown at us up on UFO Hill there, and it was large because it sounded like an explosion. when we were kids, they used to, throw stones at each other. Well, they throw stones at me, and I throw stones back. Pretty irresponsible, things you do as kids. But the sound of a pebble and a rock, but something that's large and heavy. It was like an explosion. So that led me to believe, along with some other very strange sounds, animal sounds, that I couldn't identify. No one else has been able to identify. I put the footage up on YouTube, and no one's been able to tell me what the creature was. But I'm assuming that it's probably Bigfoot, because they are seen in the area, and particularly next to Skinwalker Ranch there.
Yeah, they like to throw rocks, and hearing something like that, I can understand how intimidating that would have felt, because you don't know where it's coming from, or if it's when I first started sleeping in my tent in that private location there. I had a lot of fear, I didn't know if I'd get a tent or a rock or a tree fall on my tent kind of thing, and that I had that fear, quite a bit for quite a while. It took some getting used to sleeping in a tent, knowing that they were all around, kind of thing. So
yeah, I'm actually trying to get to what you've done. I've been out there at night time, and that's pretty scary out in the wilderness all by yourself and in pitch darkness,
Yeah, it's the tent. I was the only one who slept in that tent. The other guy, he always crashed out in the cottage. I wanted to be in the tent, though. As regardless of the fear, I just shoved the fear aside, because I knew what I had going on there, and it was, I didn't want to bypass this opportunity. It was just too great of an opportunity to let fear get in the way. So, but it's definitely not something for everyone. It can get, pretty scary when you don't have when you haven't had the interactions going on for a while at first. There's there's a bit of fear there for sure.
It's understandable, because it's like there's a survival instinct that jumps in there. You don't know what you're dealing with, and I totally understand that. Before we go any further, I'd like to play some of the audio files that you supplied me with. They're pretty amazing, so let's play those. those are pretty amazing. Now, just to let you know, I'm in a duplex here, so I'm probably freaking the neighbours out a little bit as I'm playing this audio. But anyway, that last voice, there's two there. It sounds like there's Nefertia, right? And then there's, is it his sister?
Um, Definitely a younger sibling. What was happening there was I had my audio mics running through my sunroof, and I had it's not the whole piece, but I had uh, uh, one of the foam, windsock foam thing over top of the microphones, and he started messing with that, making all kinds of noise with it. And actually, after that, which is not attached to that piece there. It sounds like Nefertiti's, giving him shit kind of thing. And yeah, so there was definitely two of them there. Maybe more, I don't know, but definitely two. The first three files, they were all from June 28th, 2013. And there was, on that third one, you can hear Nefertia. It was actually the first time he tried to say the word flower. And he couldn't control his voice, and he kind of laughed right after he said it. And it was after some time that he managed to really articulate that really well, and to a point where he was saying it, with pride, and you could hear it in his voice, sort of thing. So it was really interesting how he picked up on the words like that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, and this shows that they're not just they're not an ape, because they're speaking, they're responding to you, and they're trying to speak English. I mean, I find that really interesting about your files that you have.
They've they can write too. I've had them stuff written down on paper. They've written in the snow on my vehicle, and spelled things, and they can write both forwards and backwards, which I found really interesting. It made me wonder if where they're doing that from, this other parallel existence, if it's a mirrored thing, sort of thing. I'm not sure, right? I'm just speculating here. With the backwards writing that I would see, kind of, there are pieces too, in the audio where I've picked up that it sounds Native American, and there's definitely words. It's quite clear. Some of the stuff sounds like it has an Asian dialect. Some of it sounds like it has a Native American dialect, and then there's some English, and so it seems to be a mixture of languages, involved in some of their stuff there.
Okay, I just wondered too, these voices that you've recorded. Now, did you hear them actually live when they were doing that, or was that picked up later on?
Oh, a lot of them I heard live, yeah, and I had, I can't remember. I think it was 9 or 10 different incidents of verbal communication with Nefertia, so back and forth with him at relatively close range. He was probably about 30, 40 feet away from me at the corner of the cottage. And this is why I would capture his voice so clear, because he would keep showing up in the same spot. So I would run multiple audio recorders. I'd put one near me, and I'd put one near him, and they would actually gravitate to my equipment. Like, not just the audio recorders, they would gravitate to my camera too, because we would leave cameras out for them. And well, you're familiar with the Skinwalker Ranch story, and that's probably the craziest story out there regarding all that stuff. But there was some things going on there too, with the cameras being left on the table inside, and there was dozens of images imposed on them. So that was something that became, it was a big thing while we were doing that. You never know what you're going to get, right? Pick up the camera and you check, and you go, oh, I got a dozen new images on here. So that was always fun to scroll through and see what we got, because you're always hoping that they're going to show themselves on the camera.
I'm wondering too, as you say, that they've come into your house and used your camera. Are they are they somehow coming in astral form, or perhaps they're coming in through some other dimension that enables them to pass through physical objects?
They can pass through physical objects. That I'm the situation, like I've seen in several places that I've been. The last place I was living at, I was renting off a good buddy of mine, and there was one night they started showing him their presence, their existence. It took a little while. I told him when I moved in there things might start happening, and they did. The first thing they did was rifle his wallet one night while he was sleeping, and you know that it wasn't the best way to start off. It kind of pissed me off a little bit. Like, come on, guys, you're making me look bad here. Rifling my buddy's wallet, and I'm the only one in the house, right? And this happened in his bedroom when he was sleeping, and so it was about 3 weeks later that they showed him a footprint. They left him a footprint in the snow out front where he steps out to go have a smoke. And so I was really happy when they did that, because it confirmed for him that there indeed was stuff going on, and I wasn't around. I was out of the house. I'd been out all afternoon. He actually phoned me and all excited and told me. And then one of the other things they did was they actually gave him physical contact on his face, and they telepathically called his name twice one night within half an hour. And then another thing that happened to him, which was pretty amazing, and I haven't even seen this. I was upstairs when it happened. He was downstairs, standing behind his bar, just watching the TV across the room, sort of thing. And he said a dark Sasquatch-like shape from floor to ceiling came through the door, walked across the room in front of him, and out through the wall. So, and he didn't come upstairs for about a half an hour after. That's when he told me. I said, "You waited half an hour to tell me this?" So he got to witness that, and the activity that I've witnessed, in the homes and that have been in the city, and you can tell that they just have some incredible abilities, even to a point where they can enter your dreams and communicate, in your subconscious that way. And I've had that happen several times. And they brought one of their children to me that way, whose hand I got to hold, and he was about, I say he because that's what I felt. He was about the size of a 2-year-old, and I got to feel that little guy's energy, all his excitement, all his nervousness, and he was really freaked out, and it really gave me a good sense of who they are as a people and how they feel, and it was one of my most incredible experiences doing this. And I've had several incidents of dreams, if you want to call them that, on location, or in the dream you're exactly as you are where you are at the time. Like with the little guy, I was sleeping on the couch, laying on my side, facing the back of the couch, and it's exactly how I was, in this dream state. When an older female, I could sense her right there, and she brought the little guy, introduced him to me. I don't know what his name is. I'd like to know, but and immediately after that incident was over, I woke up and I kind of raised my arm up. I was looking for more, and this is usually what happens too when I have these incidents of communication with them in the dream state. I wake up immediately afterwards, and it really sticks with you. It really stays with you when they do that. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that the one that came to me, he actually came up to me and tapped me on my brow, shaking me in my bed and telling me a date to come out there, letting me know it wasn't a dream. So they can do some amazing things, as you say, when they come into our homes.
So that's awesome. You had that experience too, then, in the dream state where they came to you.
I was actually wide awake, lying on my bed. I'm an insomniac. I have a terrible time trying to sleep. I've got a very active mind, very hard to shut down. But he actually came up to me and tapped me right just above my brow or my head, and it actually shook the whole bed. At the same time, he told me January 13th. At the time that he did that, I guess to let me know that it wasn't just a dream, to know that it was actually real. So, it was pretty amazing to have that happen. I haven't had, to the extent that you have, where you've had gifts given to you and, to that extent, but I have had many supernatural experiences. I want to ask you, has anybody analyzed Nefertiti's audio before?
Mark, I've tried. Every now and again, I'll get on the computer and I'll search for somebody to do analysis. There's a lot of agendas in this subject, and I've had a lot of people with their backs up, about the stuff I put out. I've gone through a lot of ridicule, as I'm sure you're aware of. They're just part of it, kind of thing. When you come out with something so with the quality it is, right? So it's been really difficult to find anybody that wants to attach their name to it. People, I think they just fear for their reputations, and they don't want to touch it. At this point, I'm sure at some point it's going to happen. And especially now, as I see the subject coming around and a lot more people starting to realize that they are interdimensional, I believe ancient people with some incredible abilities, this higher evolved consciousness than we have, and people are starting to realize this. So eventually science is going to have to jump on board, and they have no choice. If they want to progress with understanding this subject more, they're going to have to start accepting the consciousness aspect of their existence, and just taking more of this into account to progress their understanding. So I'm sure at some point it's going to happen, but I've pretty much given up on that. Although there is a guy I know that's going to be doing a conference soon that is going to be utilizing some of my audio files and showing it in comparison to some of the other stuff that's been put out there. So that I've been speaking with this gentleman for a bit, and he's quite intelligent, and I look forward to the results of that presentation. But I can't really say much more than that at this point.
Sure. I'd just like to mention I watched a video by YouTuber Thinker Thunker, and he actually did a audio analysis of some of your recordings that you have. Maybe you're aware of them or not, but he showed that there's some very interesting dynamics to the sound in your recordings. Dynamics that are beyond at least what he determined, what the human voice can produce. Now, he tried to reproduce the sounds that you have, using his own voice, and he just couldn't. He couldn't match it. He couldn't match it. So that was just something interesting. Have you had other people come in? I know you mentioned your friend that was that you were staying with, or he was staying with you, the skeptic friend that's not skeptic anymore. But has anybody else, any outsiders, come in and experienced some of the phenomena that you've talked about?
Yeah, there was one gentleman, Chris Munch. He's a filmmaker, director from Los Angeles, and I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Letters from the Big Man.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, that's Chris's movie. So that's the reason why Chris got invited in, because of his view on the Sasquatch, that he wasn't he didn't have this monster mentality. His film depicts them basically as closest to the truth of what they are, more than anything else that's out there at this point. So Chris, he's a super nice guy too. Just love the guy. He was really a pleasure to have there, and he stayed for 3 nights, and he did get to experience some of the phenomena that was happening there, and he did put out a video under the channel Speaking of Sasquatch, Sasquatch Ontario, that one there, and it's a almost 2 hour documentary, and he talks about his experiences and some of the stuff that happened there. Getting images imposed on his camera, seeing a marble appear out of thin air right in front of his eyes. There was a few things going on there that Chris got to witness. So it was nice to have someone come in and validate the experiences that were going on there. But we weren't all about trying to prove to everybody. It was more of a situation that was being protected. Even though still it was nice to get at least one person in there, invited to experience and verify things. But other than that, it's basically been a personal journey for myself, right? And I just shared the experiences, and I see this as a doorway out of this dysfunctional, entirely broken, corrupt system we're all subject to. The Sasquatch, they know a better way, and this is part of why I put this out there. I'm not too fond of the way the world is run, and the corporations and the governments, and how corrupt everything is, and it would be nice to see all that dispersed at some point, and a much better way of life implemented, and something that's more balanced with the earth, and harmonious among people. And this is what the Sasquatch are about. So
does the activity, does it mostly occur at night time, or does it really matter?
Doesn't matter, but I prefer at night. I think it happens more at night. I don't know why, because they're invisible, so it doesn't really seem to matter. Activity would happen any time. I'd come out of the cottage sometimes in the morning, and a marble would hit me in the chest, or I'd get a tongue cluck in the ear. I've pulled up there at 5 p.m. fully daylight, unloading my vehicle, and I come out and there's a 17-inch footprint sitting in the snow, and a hand woven gift in my camera bag in my open trunk. Just from running into the cottage and then coming back out to get another load of gear, sort of thing. So it doesn't matter. Although I like the late night stuff. That's when the vocals would tend to happen. Especially around the 4 o'clock a.m., 4 a.m. time. They tend to, I think, let their voices loose a lot more in the later hours.
Have you ever had this experience where they've actually walked up to you? Now, this has happened to me several times. At first, I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was strange. I'd have had something would walk through the bush, and the bushes, there's leaves and foliage all over the ground. So whenever something takes a step, you can hear it. Well, I had something bipedal approach me, like another person approached me, and I even was taking a leak when I was leaving one time. I was leaving the area, and I was taking a leak right at the time when you don't want anything to approach you. Something starts walking up this steep slope right by me where I was. And I was getting ready for somebody to appear around the corner, and no one shows up. I mean, is that typically what can happen in that kind of area where you're at when you go to?
Yeah, definitely. You hear footsteps, and there's nothing there. That's quite common. What's funny is they have a really good sense of timing. Their timing is impeccable. They get you right there where you're taking a leak, right? And I found even with vocalizations and stuff, it's like they know exactly when you're going to scuff your foot on the ground, and they'll let a vocal out, and you question, like, what was that? Did you hear that? And you know, but I have audio recorders running, so I capture it all. But this would happen time and time again. They're really good at what they do, at catching us off guard, at surprising us, and coming around when we least expect it, sort of thing. So.
Well, in my area, I get these really I don't know what it is, but it's like something crashes right next to me, and I can't see any evidence of something falling off a tree or anything. It's really pretty bizarre. Maybe you've had that kind of thing. I don't know.
Um, I know exactly what you're talking about there too. Yeah, one time I had a cooler, a bunch of pots and pans and stuff in it. This was early on in that situation, and I had the I had the audio running every visit, so um, I played the audio back, and my cooler was being messed with, just like pots bang and all kinds of things rattling around. And I remember the next day, everything looked normal, like nothing was touched. So yeah, it almost seems like they can do things in another dimension that it sounds like it's happening in this one, but there's nothing to show for it, sort of thing. There's a lot of bizarre stuff like that goes on for sure.
Now, I noticed in the files that you sent me, there's some big footprints, like in the snow. Is there a way that obviously there are people that fake stuff, that try to get attention or whatever. There's even shoes out there that are made like a giant foot.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if the manufacturers did that on purpose, but how can one tell the difference between, say, a fake print and something that's more likely to be genuine?
Well, there's one that I sent you. Actually, I think I sent you the both angles from the front and the back. You can actually see the hair, the way the hair has pushed against the snow around the edge. The roughness on the foot pad. Um, some of them have toe splay. If you have a trackway, there's going to be differences in that trackway, and also the trackway itself. They walk like they're walking on a tightrope. Even the young ones, although not all of them, because I have seen stagger in some of the prints from a really small one. But they tend to walk one foot directly in front of the other, unlike us, right? We're staggered in our walk. Um, their toe, their big toe size, that's pretty large in comparison to ours.
Yeah, yeah. It's just looking at some of your pictures here, and you can tell they've got some weight, some real weight to them. The way that that's impacted in the snow and the mud or the dirt. Just pretty interesting. I also noticed too that they have a very large stride, a long stride that a human can't possibly fake if they're walking. That is.
Yeah, they also have an ability, which was funny. Nefertia playing games, they like to mess with us. They really do. And there was, I remember one night, I, Nefertia left a trackway in the snow, outside the cottage there. So I'm following it, and I noticed it's like, okay, a left print, and then I think it was about 10 feet or something, or maybe it was 5 feet. I can't remember. Uh, I think it might have been 5 feet between the prints, but it was a left foot and then a left foot, then a right foot, and so it's like, okay, was this guy hopping 5 feet on one foot? That didn't make sense, and it was just part of the realization of um, how he was showing me, how that they choose. They do not have to leave a footprint. They can walk normal and not leave a print, So he was probably just walking normal, and it's like, okay, I'll leave this one. And, he was choosing when to leave those footprints in that trackway. So they, they can walk without leaving footprints if they so choose. and vice versa.
Yeah, I noticed that there was one of your pictures. I don't know if I have it here, but it's actually a print in the snow, and there's actually some dirt residue in the actual print that shows that they were walking on dirt or something, and then they stood on the pure white snow, leaving it on there.
I was just going to elaborate on that a bit. I saw that a few times, and there was I think I might have sent you the one where there's a green dice beside them. I used those to mark out a trackway because I walked up and down the road by the cottage because there was a trackway left, and I wanted to mark out the prints before I filmed them, so I wasn't wasting time, searching for them while I was filming, right? And the first two prints that were left, they appeared in the middle of the road, and the one had a lot of dirt in it. And then when he started to walk, I think it was pretty much the very next step. His foot was clean. So he appeared. That's the other thing. I don't think they have to appear in the physical form to actually leave prints. I think they can do it in that invisible state. Um, but even still, like leaving that print, those first prints, there was no dirt anywhere. This was all freshly clean snow. So I don't know where the dirt came from. Um, and I had witnessed this on several occasions. I didn't collect any of it. I didn't have a desire to collect it because I really don't care about trying to prove any of that to science. I don't, want to give them any leeway or any understanding of how Sasquatch does this, or that was my mentality at the time. It still is. It's like because I know as soon as they get any information like that, military jumps all over it, right? And that's the last thing I want to see. So, but this dirt that would appear from the bottom of their feet, I witnessed that a few times, and I don't know if the where they're coming from, if it's even the same time of year. It seems that okay, there's no snow on the ground here, or are they, jumping underground somehow, through some portal, or I don't know. I just know that those prints would appear out of thin air, and the first ones would have dirt, and then all of a sudden the feet would go clean.
Now it's really interesting talking about these other dimensions, portals. Now I don't know if you know of him or not, Dr. Matthew Johnson. He is an experiencer slash researcher slash author over in Southern Oregon. Himself and other people have witnessed portals out there in Southern Oregon. In the middle of the night, they've seen beings come through them, and also these small 3-foot, kind of like Ewok, kind of like creatures with red eyes, guardians guarding the portal, seeing Sasquatch come through these portals, and other strange things. I don't know if you've seen any kind of portals like that, but I'm just kind of interesting.
No, I've not witnessed anything like that. I have had discussions with a native about the little people, and perhaps maybe that's what those are. I don't know. Just speculation, but I've not witnessed anything like that myself.
I know that quite often in Bigfoot areas, there's these strange wooden structures that are found out in the middle of nowhere. A lot of people have taken pictures of these structures out in the forest, myself included, seen them, but nobody has seen these things being built or necessarily know maybe what they mean. Do you have any thoughts on these structures?
Well, I know that they're not just in the middle of in the middle of nowhere. They're practically anywhere, from what I've been privy to understanding. And that Nefertia and family, where I situated my tent, they actually marked my tent area out for me with around the perimeter with structures and tree breaks, all all around the perimeter. Because I'd always put my tent in the same spot, so that was really interesting. And I know that they make there's structures that have been made that are basically put in our faces. People walk past them all the time. And I believe that, one of the reasons there could be multiple reasons, expressions of art or markers or territorial markers or some sort of thing. But I also think that just as UFOs are leaving crop circles to show their indication of their existence, I think Sasquatch are leaving tree structures to show an indication of their existence here on the earth. And like I said, they're not just in the middle of nowhere. They're in areas that you wouldn't really expect them to be. So I think that they may be assigned to show us their existence. For those of us who get it and catch on. And I think, the rest of the people, they just walk right past them. They don't even notice them.
There's the situation, you've heard of David Paulides probably, and Missing 411, where you get people going out to these national parks and they're just disappearing completely off the face of the earth. The bloodhounds can't track them or refuse to follow the trail. They act very strangely. In history, like the natives, like in the Solomon Islands and some of the tribes of the Native Americans, they talked about this type of Bigfoot called the Janoska, or stone giants. The Iroquois talked about them and how they would eat their people, capture them and eat them. And then we have the Paiutes, which talked about these red-headed giants that would do the same thing. There's a cave up in northern Nevada called Lovelock Cave. Apparently they had to actually go to war against these things and basically set a fire at the entrance of the cave to kill some of these giants. Now, I'm definitely not saying that these are the Sasquatch, but there seems to be some kinds of creatures out there that are actually taking humans. Now, what are your thoughts on that?
Um, Considering the vastness of the universe and some of the strange stuff going on and folklore, all this stuff, dating back to antiquity that that's been told through the ages and that. I'm sure Sasquatch are not the only ones out there, and from my experiences, and it's been in multiple locations. I've had nothing shown but benevolence. There's never been any malevolent activity towards me, but it does seem that there are other things out there that are possibly malevolent. And yeah, I'm well aware of the missing 401 cases. I watched one of Dave Paulides' presentations at the Sasquatch Summit last November in Washington. So I got to listen to some of the cases he was going on about there, and it does seem that really the only explanation is interdimensional activity happening. But what is the source of that? I have no idea. So there are definitely some strange occurrences happening around those cases.
It's interesting. Even down here in New Zealand, on the other side of the world from you, the natives here, the Maori, they talked to the prospectors, the early prospectors in the 19th and 20th century. They warned them, said, look, there are wild men out in the woods here that could easily overpower any warrior. And they even described saying that they throw stones at them. Now, this is at a time in history when they didn't even know about what was happening to people in other parts of the world, the Native Americans, for example, the stone throwing, and then there were reports of people getting their necks broken and their heads twisted right off, which apparently the Janoska also did this. So there's these other kinds of frightening beings out there, and like you, my experience with the Sasquatch. I mean, I don't know about the others, but the Sasquatch is that they've never harmed me. Yes, it can be a pretty scary, hair-raising experience to hear their yells, their voices, whatever, their tree breaks and all that. But there's some other kinds of beings that are out there. There are other natural predators out there that certainly would take man. But for example, you take a missing 411 map, and you overlay that map with, say, the Bigfoot sighting map. You'll find there's a strong correlation between where people are going missing and where Bigfoot sightings are. So perhaps these other creatures / beings or whatever, whether people are disappearing into portals or they're being abducted by some other creature, there's something that's going on out in the wilderness there. And I know there's something that goes through my mind when I'm out there by myself. I'm totally helpless if something came after me. I mean, there's no way in heck I could get out of there fast enough, not with a big pack on. I know Sasquatch, they can move incredibly fast. When I've heard them, they have run right past me. I mean, quite easily, without any effort on a very steep slope. I know they could outrun anything that we know of out there in the wilderness, including us.
Yeah, for sure. There's when you're mentioning the overlay with the map thing, we really can't blame anything at this point. For all we know, it could be something else that are evolved consciousness that are well aware of the Sasquatch, but malevolent and knows that they can take people and do it in a way that would blame the Sasquatch. We don't know that, right? So it's difficult to say who is making these abductions and how this is who's responsible for this sort of thing. But as far as the speed and agility of the Sasquatch, there's no getting away, that's for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about something about that happened to, I think it was you. You were in your tent out there, and I guess it was maybe some juveniles that were messing with you, and they were kind of like hitting you with a stick or something. Was that you, or maybe I'm getting mixed up with somebody else?
No, I know what I think I know what you're talking about. I was blowing up my air mattress, and the mosquitoes were thick, so I was inside the tent. The cottage guy I think he was taking some photographs. He was nearby, but nowhere near my tent area, kind of thing. And so I was using one of those manual pumps for my air mattress, and my head was bobbing up and down at the top of the tent. And I had my video camera running. It wasn't pointed at the tent, though. It was just kind of pointed at the forest, and you can hear my air mattress being pumped up. And then you hear a stick crack, tree limb break, and instantly, almost instantly, it just whacks me on the head hard. So there was no time. If it broke, if it was a natural break, say, and fell from the top of the tree, to hit me that hard, it would have had to, gain a bit of velocity there. So, and that would have required a little bit of time, definitely longer than what happened between that break and that thing hitting me on the head. So, yeah, he clobbered me one.
Wow, yeah. So I'm going to probably be sleeping out there like you, so I'm just wondering what I can expect, to try not to get too freaked out. I remember you mentioned that one time you you were camping out in the woods there, and you looked out. I think you looked out your tent, or something happened. You were looking out, and you saw like something like a giant eye looking at you.
That was before I mention that, I just want to say that when I got hit in the head, he wasn't trying to hurt me. If he wanted to hurt me, I would not be getting up. So, I think that was just him playing around, not knowing his strength kind of thing. And he was just having some fun, and I let him know how much that hurt, and it never happened again. So, but as far as the eye thing, that was the first time I went there, and that was the first time that I went to stay in my tent, and I think it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. The cottage owner and his son were at the cottage, and so I left them. I went walking up the road a little bit, and I had my tent set up already in the forest. So I went to veer into the forest. I just had one of those little LED lights, so it doesn't penetrate very much into the dark there. And I went to turn into the forest, and I saw this big orange bright eye looking at me. I think it was one of them peeking out from behind a tree, hence the one eye sort of thing. And it was glowing like there was a light turned on in its head. This was no reflection. And I've read about this, and heard other cases of their eyes lighting up like that. So that was my only experience with something like that. And I ended up turning around and going back to the cottage, and I slept on the couch that night. So that was my first attempt at sleeping in the tent, and I chickened out. And then it was after that I slept in the tent the next visit, and then I never looked back after that.
Do you think they are repelled by lights and video cameras? I mean, I've heard other people say that have had experiences say, don't turn on lights. It something about light repels them, or if you happen to have cameras, that's another repellent too. What's your opinion on that?
Nefertia would leave us trackways on purpose to get us outside to document the prints. He would do this on purpose. He wanted us out there, and I had lights that were really bright for filming, to document the trackways and stuff. And I wouldn't necessarily be pointing, looking, trying to find him, but the lights we had were bright, and I'd be taking all kinds of pictures and filming and that sort of thing, and there was never an issue there. And he was there, so he would let us know he was there often enough, so that didn't seem to have any effect at all.
Do you think that they have any? I know they have varying abilities. I'm wondering if there's certain ones that have abilities to transcend time and space to go inside someone's home, but there seems to be, when I listen to people's stories and accounts, there seems to be ones that are very like earthbound, or very earth-like. They have to like go into someone's home physically. And then there's those that are very ghost-like. They seem to not leave any tracks or anything. They can quite easily go into people's places. So I don't know if there's just different ones that have different abilities, or there's just maybe different kinds of creatures. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either, Mark. It seems to me from a lack of people being able to track them to any degree that's really able to find them. That it seems they all have an incredible ability to evade us. Whether that's whether some of them don't have that invisibility, I don't know. It seems to me that I've heard enough stories where people will see them. They might be behind a tree, and and then they're not, and they don't know how they got away, kind of thing. And are their abilities learned? I would think, that they have to teach their young. I would assume. I don't know. I'm just speculating. I don't really know. All I know is my own experiences, and at this point, in a multitude, several locations, that I've never really gotten a good glimpse, and they've been close. So, with Nefertia and his family, they do have the ability to visit me anywhere. So that's, from my experience so far. If I went down south or something, would he be able to follow me there? I don't know, but down in these parts, for sure, there's never been an issue showing up at home, regardless of where I am.
They seem to be incredibly hard to capture on camera or on video. Have you physically seen Nefertia, or is it something that's sort of he's kind of shown himself to you in your mind, or can you explain how if he interacts with you in a visual sense at all?
Very little. There's one where I believe it's him that I captured peeking over an uprooted tree. I didn't even know I had that shot for 6 months. I was going through older photos when I saw that. There was an incident we had at the cottage where the cottage owner's son and I were looking out the window, and he was pointing to a tree, a big hairy tree in the forest there that he just found it odd, didn't recognize this, and he'd been there for over 3 decades, this property, so he knows his property. So if he's questioning something like that, and I had binoculars, I had a camera, video camera, didn't use any of them, and we basically forgot about the incident at the time until we came back the next visit, and then it all came flooding back to us, and we had a conversation about, hey, what the hell happened there? Remember this? So that was really strange. That was another one of those mind zap incidents, it seemed like. I've seen Nefertia partially when he's touched my face. He's put his hand over the front of my face, and I saw this smoky like substance appear inches from my eyes. So there's that sort of thing. But as far as any good visual, he's come to me in a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, like each time that they come to me in their dreams, their facial features, they never really stick with me. I never really I can never really remember what their faces look, which I also find quite strange.
Now, I'm talking, this is Mark Capel, The Haunted Man. I'm talking with Mike Patterson of YouTube channel Sasquatch Ontario. Mike, is there any website that you would like to go, anything you would like to give out to the listeners?
I just, I have the YouTube channel. I'm not, it's Sasquatch Ontario. There's, I was given a new location about 15 months after I left that other area, had a, falling out with the cottage owner's son. Which at this point it's I understand why everything happened. And I'm at peace with all that. The new area, I made about a dozen visits. I just put out the one video, and whenever I visit there, I have they definitely are around me. The vocals haven't been happening like they were before. So yeah, as far as putting out new stuff, not really. It's a lot of work. I still have a lot of old footage, raw footage, and raw audio to go through, all kinds of it. I just don't feel up to it these days. But anyway, so there's the Sasquatch Ontario channel, and I will be speaking at Cooney and Kelly Lapsaritis conference in September in Washington. That's the beginning. I think that's September 1st to 3rd. And I'm also going to be speaking in Washington again mid-November at the Sasquatch Summit. So I have these two presentations coming up, and that should be interesting and fun, new experience. So I look forward to blasting some of the audio through the PA system.
Well, you seem to have audio that's, I think it's probably the best quality audio that I've heard as far as having them up close. And you've used high quality audio recorders as the Zoom audio recorder, or I forget what it's called, the
yeah, they're
H2 Zoom or something.
yeah. Well, I have an H2. That one I plug in a pair of omnidirectional mics, so I bypass the built-in mics on that one. I just use the Omnis, and then I bought an H1 Zoom. I find the Zoom audio recorders pretty good because mostly the handheld audio recorders, I find they don't record at the 320 bit rate MP3 quality that the Zoom does. That's the highest bit rate for MP3, right? So, and if you're going to record in WAV format, then you're eating up a lot of hard drive space. Because I tend to record till the batteries run out, kind of thing. I'll sometimes 8-10 hours a night. So even with at 320 kilobytes per second, I'm using up a gig, 1.2 gig for one file for one recorder. So it can add up quick, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, use the Zoom recorders because of the quality they record at. They've done me well, and I've never had any problems with them, no matter what the temperatures are, how cold it gets.
Well, I've picked up some recordings. One that sound a little bit like Nefertitia's voice, but was sounded like a grandmotherly kind of Bigfoot. Actually, when I was leaving an area, it seems like sometimes they can speak and they can imprint your recorder, electronic voice on. And now a lot of times people use recorders for ghost hunting, paranormal investigating. I think that they also know how to leave impressions on our digital devices as well.
I agree, and I've had my own incidents where I've captured some EVPs that there's actually one of my videos. It's called Above and Beyond. There's a part in there where I'm filming. I can't remember the timestamp on it, but I'm filming the tail light on my vehicle because Nefertia, his father, I believe it's his father, left his partial 20-inch footprint on the snow on my back window, and Nefertia put his print on my tail light because I have a layer of snow in the car. So I'm filming the back tail light, and we used to cast prints all the time, right, in the snow, and this. If you listen closely, I don't point it out in the video, but if you listen closely and it's clear, and you hear a voice that says "cast it," it whispers, it goes "cast it," and that's Sasquatch. That's their humor, right? You can't cast a footprint on the car, but
they're pretty funny, aren't they?
but yeah, that's on that video, and I knew it was there when I posted it. I didn't point it out. There was a lot of things I never pointed out in the videos. It just kind of left them open for people to figure it out, find it themselves. And
you're now at the point where you're past the point of making castings. I remember that you said that you had sent castings into scientists for them to evaluate, but they've never really responded, or have they responded to you?
I sent one to John Bindernagel. He said the Nefertitia's foot, the length is, within the human range, but the width wasn't. and John, he backs me up, but he doesn't want to do it publicly because I won't shut up about the interdimensional stuff, and science just doesn't want to go there, and they're choosing to ignore this, and I can respect that. I can understand where he's coming from. Um, Having to deal with colleagues, and it's very controversial as it is already. But there was I had given one to Les Stroud too, because I met Les a few times, sat down to lunch with him, and I gave him a cast. And so there's one of his shows. There's Les, John, and Jeff Meldrum all sitting at a table full of casts, and Les points to the one and says, I want to do that one, or something to that extent. So they laser scanned that one on television. They never came out with the results, from my understanding, and I'm quite confident that they never did, because if they did, that would have raised some eyebrows. It's like, okay, well, if that footcast is real, then why aren't we scrutinizing Mike's audio? Science has basically avoided me. At some point, I'm sure it'll get to that point eventually, where they will look at the evidence, but when that's going to happen, I have no idea. It's just a matter of science catching up, kind of thing. There's so many of us that are having experiences, and science is, stuck in the background, really, with their old paradigm mentality, and fear of, I guess, I don't know, losing funding or losing face or whatever, about even mentioning anything about paranormal or that aspect. And until they do that, they're not going to progress any further, because this is what Sasquatch are. They are beyond this 3D paradigm. They are, their consciousness is evolved, and they're showing us that there's so much more to our existence than our five senses.
I've heard about the 9-foot skeletons found over at Catalina Island and other places, and apparently these skeletons of these giants just disappear, never to be heard of again. There's a museum, I believe it's Lovelock Museum. I believe that at one point they had a giant skeleton, but it's like, being a scientist or an airline pilot, things like that. If you report anything that's out of the norm, it's not exactly career enhancing, and they're relying on funding from commercial enterprises, and their backers, they don't want to support anything that might seem like it's crazy or too crazy, or they might lose their funding, or people don't want to lose their jobs. So I can certainly understand from a lot of people's perspective. I know, like, with me, doing like my ghost hunting back in America, a lot of people thought I was nuts, and I was hoping, I wasn't going to lose my job or anything because of what I did, but it's just, it's a risk that people take, and it seems like a lot of people don't really come out and talk about this. A lot of people, maybe, when they're retired and they don't have to rely on an income from a company, and worry about losing that because of reporting their experience. There was a man over in Fort Duchesne, a security guard, that I believe it was February 12th of 2012. There was a huge saucer, well, I say huge, about the size of a house, I guess not that big, but with red and blue flashing lights that had seen this saucer. There was all these people in the community, I'd spoken to various witnesses, had seen this saucer. Now this security guard, he put this in his report, and he lost his job. He reported what he saw on his shift at work, and he lost his job. So I can understand people being nervous about talking openly. I mean, it's terrible, really, isn't it, that we can't speak openly about these experiences. A lot of people get shamed. You go and talk about this. You mentioned about people, coming in and basically putting you down. And I guess we all have to sort of mature and sort of ignore those people that do that, the ones that are just straight debunkers. It's one thing to have an open, honest question, but it's another thing just to be attacking people because you don't like what they're talking about just because you haven't had that experience.
Yeah, putting out what I have that's brought a lot of ridicule, and um, I've gone through a gamut of emotions dealing with this. I'm finally at a point where I would lash back, and I was responding to a lot of the negative postings and that, and it's taken me a long time and help from others to get past that point, and I'm finally there where I've let all that go, and it's only recent too, and so I'm not responding anymore to any of the negative stuff, and I'm quite fine with it. I have no emotional attachment to it anymore, and um, I know my experiences, and I'm just putting out what I've experienced, and I because of that, I've I've seen it. It gives other people um, the the strength to do the same. And the more of us that do speak out, the more of us. It gathers steam, and more people start standing up, and sooner or later there's going to be enough of us where the whoever it is going to have to listen, and things are going to change because they're going to realize that there's much more going on here. We've been conditioned and brainwashed, and stuck in this 3D paradigm that's it's broken. It doesn't work anymore. There's physics is showing that, and there's so much more going on with our existence, our consciousness, and we are in a paradigm shift right now. Humanity is changing, and people are waking up, and they're realizing that there is ETs and there are Sasquatch, and from my understanding, they're connected, and they're coming out. They are revealing themselves on their terms, not on our terms. It's not science discovering them. It's they're revealed to humanity as they see fit. This is what I see is going on.
Why do you think they're doing this? Obviously they're putting themselves in potential danger. I'm wondering what's the purpose of, it seems to be more and more people. Obviously this has happened, a lot throughout history, but since we're all connected now through the internet, and somebody can have an experience, say, in Australia, and, hours later, or if it's streamed live, someone could find out about it, over in Africa. Basically we can interconnect like a giant consciousness and learn from each other, and have these experiences ourselves.
Um, I think they're this reveal. I believe it's because of the damage being done to the earth. We're just killing it at the rate we're destroying the earth is ridiculous. Decimating the forests and poisoning the oceans and the air, and the food, and it's just everything. We're just killing everything, for what? For a buck, for control, for power. It's all wrong, and these other like Sasquatch and the ETs, we're dealing with beings that have an evolved consciousness, and um, the Sasquatch. They live in balance with the earth, and I'm sure there's some of them that are just pissed off at humanity, and I use that term loosely. At because they've been watching our destruction and what we do to each other, and as far as the connectedness goes, from my understanding, everything is connected. All of us and everything, not just us, but actually everything. Everything is connected, and this is what I believe they're trying to teach us.
Do you think that Sasquatch and UFOs are connected? I mean, I don't know if you've had any experiences with UFOs or not.
Um, uh, it's interesting. The last after I'd mentioned after about 15 months after the last or visiting the cottage, I was given a new location, and that came to me just out of the blue, and it was about 5 minutes as the crow flies from the old one. So that was it was quite interesting. And right before that happened, I got a visit by which I believe was Nefertiti's father, because he looked to be about a 12-foot Sasquatch. In my dream, stepped out on the road. I was walking down this road. There was a bend in the road. It was at night, and there was trees on both sides. And he stepped out in front of me, and I ended up. Um, he was like right there in front of me, and I reached out to shake his hand. I ended up grabbing his finger because his hand was so big, and I held on just a little longer than normal for a handshake kind of thing. And I remember he had this look in his face like, okay, he understood. It's like, "Yeah, okay, I get it." And I let go, and he took one step, like 10-foot step, it seemed in the dream, and was gone. And he disappeared, and I woke up, and then shortly after that, I got the new location. Well, when I started going to the new location, the first three visits, I had something fly across my field of vision up in space, um, that seemed to be a satellite or something, and I got flashed 3 times, 3 visits in a row, and I'd never seen this in my life. And all of a sudden, I'm getting flashed by these objects directly above, because I'm looking straight up. They're crossing my path, and I get this bright flash, and it's like, what the hell is that? And this happened 3 visits in a row, and I was thinking, am I being exposed to another aspect of this? Is this now ETs reaching out? Do they know I'm here? I started having all these questions because all of a sudden I start getting these strange experiences up in space happening to me. So, um, and from my understanding, there is a connection there, and there are cases that I know of. I can't remember any details of any right now, but I know there's cases out there of Sasquatch seen coming out of or going into UFOs. So,
Yes, I've heard of that happening as well. Um, Yeah, I've certainly had my fair share of some very crazy stuff in the sky. Some actually close up involving beings too. But this stuff always catches me off guard. It's very hard. People say, "Oh, where's your footage?" And that, it's like this stuff happens. At least in my opinion, from my experience, it doesn't necessarily happen conveniently to you. And they don't wait there for you to take a video. I've seen metallic craft out doing prospecting in the desert, and seen some very strange things. Actually, in the same year that I had that rock thrown at us up on UFO Hill there near Skinwalker Ranch. As we're talking about ETs, the question comes up. Who are they, the Sasquatch, and where do they come from? Do you have any thoughts about this?
um, really, I have no idea. They Um, it seems they have ET origins. I believe they're terrestrial, but of extraterrestrial origin, considering their abilities. But really, I don't know. I've not had any back and forth two-way conversations with them. Well, I have with Nefertia, verbally, with the stuff that I've documented, but I've not had any telepathic back and forth. I've had a few instances, but they're always one-sided because it shocks me so much when it happens. I'm dumbfounded, too slow on the response time, kind of thing. But I other than that, it would be nice to find out one day, and hopefully one of these days, one of them does make contact with me, and I do get to ask some questions and gain some answers. But at this point, I have no idea.
Do they have any kind of shape shifting ability? Do you think that they might have the ability to appear as some kind of animal, like a wolf or something? Any thoughts to that?
When I witnessed the smoky kind of substance appear from inches from my eyes before he touched me and put his hand over the front of my face, when I think back to that, and and then I think of what I've read or heard about native culture and their understanding, and they call them shapeshifters. While I've not witnessed that directly, it wouldn't surprise me if they had that ability. Not at all.
Yeah, just because of the other things that happened to you, like the marbles and the gifts given to you, and they seem to go beyond time and space, and the ability to pass through solid objects that would be impossible for us.
Yeah, I had an incident too. I had it was my last visit, I think, or the second last. It was one of the two, and I was trying to get Nefertia to put a big marble inside a, a bottle, a beer bottle, so it wouldn't come out, ship in a bottle sort of thing. And I was getting close too. He was messing with me. Um, at one point, I had a beer bottle in front of my face. I'm talking, holding it up, kind of thing. I'm talking to the cottage guy, and we're sitting at the table having a drink, and my beer was about half empty. And all of a sudden, it's so I have it elevated in front of me, and it's right there, between us, and we both hear clink. And I said, no way. And I hold the bottle up, and sure enough, there's a marble inside. It did not go splash clink. So if he had dropped it from the top, it would have made a splash sound, and then I would have heard it. We would have heard it hit the bottom of the bottle, but we didn't hear that splash sound. So I'm quite sure that he materialized it inside the bottle. So their ability to manipulate matter seems quite incredible. Um, there's been quite a few instances with the marbles. We ended up with about 1,000 marbles between us by the time I'd left that cottage situation. So there was a lot of marble incidents that had gone on, being dropped into my hands, and when I left the cottage, one of the last things he did too, he put a big green marble on top of the bottle because he was messing with me. He dropped or materialized a small one inside that could easily come out of the bottle, and then he put a big one on top. He was playing with me, right? And I think he was saying, yeah, I know how to do that, but no, I'm not going to give that to you, at least not yet. I think if I was, had been going there longer, I would have ended up with a piece of evidence like that, which would have been pretty phenomenal to have. Because I would have let science look at that for sure. But that didn't happen. So.
They can definitely they call apport solid items seemingly out of midair. I know Dr. Barry Taff, a parapsychologist who has done many investigations to poltergeists and hauntings, has come across situations where these other beings, I'm just going to say other beings for now, but where they have the ability to drop items and seemingly out of nowhere, coins for etc. For example, and then of course there was a documentary made called The Skull Experiments, where for a period of, I believe, over 5 years,
Yeah.
there was a team that had all these items. I think there's something like almost 100 different items that were apported, including a newspaper from back in I believe it was in the 40s, made with the same kind of ink they only produced back then, and the paper was the same kind of paper, and yet the paper had not aged. So kind of really interesting, some of the stuff that can get apported in those kinds of situations.
Yeah, I've watched the skull experiments. That was really interesting, and they were doing the imposed image photography as well onto film in a locked box, unopened canister, and um, sort of the same thing the Sasquatch was doing to a degree, anyways. But yeah, that the skull experiment really shed some light on some of the phenomena that the Sasquatch were doing as well.
It seems like to me that a lot of this phenomena is it's blending into other phenomena, and it's hard to know where the division is. I know when I started getting really interested in Bigfoot because of my experience. I mean, I always have been, but when I had that personal experience, it really launched me into it. But I found that there are those that say, well, you can talk about Bigfoot, but you can't talk about UFOs, or you can't talk about this and that. But a lot of this seems to cross into other areas, other phenomena, So, it's something that's interdimensional that's happening that might manifest itself in other ways.
Um, yeah, this the whole Sasquatch thing. At first, I didn't touch the ET thing, but at this point, it's blended into that, and I have no problem, acknowledging that or admitting that I fully believe that there is a connection going on there, and who knows what else is going on too, right? I'm
Like,
sure, yeah, I'm sure there's lots of stuff we're unaware of.
it's like we're the little ants running on the ground, so unaware of what's going on around us in this big world. You can think like when we go to the zoo, we're going in, we're seeing the creatures there in the zoo, but what's observing us? And we seem so unaware of what's going on around us. Now, Mike, is there anything that you would like to bring up on this subject?
Um, just I I'm still going out there once in a while. I've not really put much time in the field lately. I just have a bit going on in my life, trying to work through some things, and I am looking forward to getting back into the field once the weather warms up a bit. Um, I'm out in the Quebec area right now, so I have definitely some prospects at checking out some areas, and I do look forward to getting back out in the field, like I said. And in the meantime, the Sasquatch, they still show up once in a while. I have no control over that. It's whenever they choose to reveal their presence, and that may be through me, through giving myself an experience, or it might be through somebody close to me, and that's happened as well. And I actually I kind of like when that happens, because it validates and shows people that some of the things I've spoken of are very real. I've had friends close to me, and that have had experiences both at home and um, a music studio that I've jammed with my buddies at. We've had incidents there, and so it does seem to follow me wherever I'm going, wherever I may be, and I believe that um, this connection will be with me, for the rest of my life. I don't think it's going to go away, especially as what I have found is um, this personal path that I'm on, whether I'm being guided or or what have you. I believe it's led me to really face myself and face who I am, face the dark parts of myself. The um, I think I'm being guided to get to that state that the Sasquatch are at, and just that fully conscious, truthful, enlightened state that they live in, and I believe they are there in my life, guiding and helping me um, deal with that, and this whole journey has been it's been difficult. There's been a lot of ups and downs, and it's not been easy to deal with. And but I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's been a hell of a ride, and it's not doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. So, even though it slows down at times, it's they always show up sooner or later, and and I hope they continue to do that. So,
Do you think that they could take us into their realm, into their dimension?
um, I believe that those portals we can step through them, as I've heard stories about that. Uh, I'm sure that they can teach us how they do what they do, and I think they do want to teach us. What we have to do, I don't know. Um, well, fully, conscious and an open heart, open mind, and I think they come from a loving, expanded consciousness. Just their way of existence is, far beyond the ego, which humanity tends to have a difficult time detaching from.
Well, we're talking to Mike Patterson of Sasquatch Ontario over on YouTube there, so I invite people listening to go and subscribe to him and check out his videos and his audio. Very interesting topic. I'd like to thank you very much, Mike, for your time. It's been a pleasure to have you on here with Haunted Man.
Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate you having me on, and it was a pleasure talking with you. And that's it's really interesting hearing about some of your own experiences. It seems like you've had quite a bit happen to you.
Yeah, it's like getting dropped down the rabbit hole.
Yeah,
Yeah, you sort of question yourself. Like, I can't believe this. You got to pinch yourself. You're like, can't believe this is happening to me.
yeah, yeah.
So I just like to invite people who really want to know the truth to get out there for themselves. And go out. Don't go out there. With the idea of taking a gun. There's people out there that want to do that, but go out there with love and respect, and I think that that we'll get that reflected back to us. So, any finishing thoughts there, Mike?
Um, just I agree with you there, and there's a lot of people that they want proof, right? And I tell them the only way you're really gonna get proof is to get your own and get out there in the field, or you can make contact from home. They will contact and connect to people anywhere. So, there are people that can't get out in the forest, but that doesn't mean they can't make a connection to them. And when Sasquatch makes contact with you, you will know it.
Yeah, I mean that's the wonderful thing that they can actually interact with you on a personal basis. Even if you've got some kind of physical disability where you can't go out into those areas, I'm sure that's going to be encouraging for people that would actually like to know about them and feel their love and understand them.
Yeah, I think put the intent out, put them in your thoughts. It seems to me that people that have watched my videos, I've heard numerous incidents of things happening, even after having discussions with people. Um, so it seems to me that they are listening um, all the time. It seems so, but I don't know. Uh, so that they are definitely watching us and listening, and I think if you put the intent out, that curiosity and loving intent towards them, you just might get a surprise one day.
Now, would you like to give out those conferences where you'll be speaking at?
Yeah, they're both in Washington. The one is September 1st to 3rd, I think, and that's the Kuoni and Kelly Lapsaritis conference. And the second one is mid-November, and that's at the Sasquatch Summit, and that's also in Washington. And yeah, so there'll be those two this year, September and November.
Of 2017. Oh, that's great. If I was in America, I certainly would like to try to make it to those. So thanks again, Mike, and I no doubt we'll talk to you down the road.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.